Her father-in-law took away her baby, but you won't believe what happened next. Banished and broken, Tamina rose from the ashes, returning not just for revenge, but with an entire kingdom. What followed was a battle for truth, power, and the ultimate triumph of a mother's love. The drums of Kinuli beat like thunder, echoing through the hills as Tamina, wrapped in royal cloth but still walking with humble grace, entered the courtyard of the Ekondu Palace. Flowers rained, cheers soared, but none of it touched the stone heart of Chief Barago. His eyes followed her like shadows. He saw no beauty, no strength, only a threat. In the middle of celebration, he pulled his son, Zubaru, aside, his voice like venom. "You bring a woman from dust to our bloodline. She'll drag us into ruins," he spat, his eyes narrow with disgust. But Zubaru stood tall, not blinking, his hand gripping Tamina's gently. "Then let the ruins bloom," he replied. Tamina didn't hear the words, but she felt them, whispers that blew colder than the wind. Still she smiled, bowed to elders, and honored every tradition. She served her in-laws with respect, but Chief Barago never smiled back. Every time she placed food before him, he pushed the plate away. Every time she greeted him, he turned his face. Then came the child, a prince born in the rainy season, Ezeko. His cry filled the palace with life, and for a moment, the whole village rejoiced. But Barago's silence deepened, his hate sharpened. He called his council at dawn, cloaked in shadows. "A woman with no bloodline cannot raise my grandson," he declared. "She'll taint him with weakness." That night, while Tamina lay weak from childbirth, Chief Barago's guards took the child. No words, no mercy, just silence. When Tamina woke, her baby was gone. Her screams broke the morning. She searched every corner of the palace, barefoot and bleeding, but the only answer she got was a cold stare from Barago and one sentence: "He's better off without your cursed blood." Zubaru raged. He fought his father, but was locked away in a far-off border outpost under the lie of royal duty. Tamina was left alone. No husband, no child, no voice. But she didn't crumble. She disappeared. Years passed. Whispers told of a woman across the western deserts, building something strange. Villages of orphans, markets of peace, schools where names didn't matter. They said she had the eyes of Tamina, and a fire no one could explain. Chief Barago grew old. Izako, now 10, began to ask questions. "Who is my mother?" The palace had no answers, only lies, but blood remembers. One day, a parade of hundreds crossed into Kinuli. Flags waved with a strange symbol, a rising sun over open hands. At its front, riding a white horse, was Tamina, no longer broken, no longer silent. Behind her marched the people she lifted, farmers, traders, children she raised as her own. She didn't come for revenge. She came with a throne of her own, and for the first time, Chief Barago shook, not from age, but from fear, because the girl he stole everything from had come back with something greater, a kingdom. Tamina's belly grew with life, and so did her joy. Every night, she whispered lullabies to the child inside her, her voice soft like wind through the leaves. Sometimes, she danced barefoot under the moon, her arms raised in silent prayer. She had nothing but hope, and that was enough. When the time came, the palace walls echoed with the cries of a newborn, a boy, healthy, breathing strong, his little fists clenched like he was ready to fight the world. Tamina held him close, tears soaking his tiny blanket. She kissed his forehead, called him my son after storm, and drifted to sleep with peace in her heart. But peace in Barago's palace was a fragile thing. At dawn, the heavy doors burst open. Chief Barago marched in with his guards, his face like stone. He didn't look at the baby. He didn't speak softly. He only gave an order. "The boy is gone. He didn't survive the night," he said, his voice dry, his eyes cold. Tamina's eyes shot open. "No, no," she cried, scrambling up, searching her arms, the bed, the room. "You lie. He was breathing. I held him." But the crib was empty. The nurse was gone, and every guard looked away. Her screams shook the palace. She ran from room to room, begging anyone to tell her the truth, but no one dared. Barago had spoken, and in this kingdom, his word was law. By evening, Tamina was no longer the proud mother. She was labelled cursed, a bad omen. "The mother of death," Barago called her before the royal court. "She brings sorrow where she walks." No trial, no proof, just exile. A cart arrived before sunset. 2 guards shoved her into it like a prisoner. No shoes, no goodbye, just silence and dust. As the palace gates shut behind her, the villagers whispered, unsure what to believe. The journey to Ijara was long, cold, and cruel. Ijara was no village. It was a forgotten land in the mountains, where the wind bit like knives and the soil grew nothing. It was where the Akondu family sent those they wanted erased. Tamina arrived broken, bruised, but breathing. Her arms ached for the baby they stole. Her heart was shattered. But somewhere deep inside her, something still burned, a question, a hope, a flicker of fire that refused to die, because a mother always knows, and she knew her baby was not dead. Tamina's feet cracked open on the sharp stones as she walked, each step a struggle between pain and purpose. The mountains of Ijara were far, and the road was cruel. She had no food, no shoes, no strength left, but her heart refused to give up. When she finally collapsed at the edge of a riverbank, the world blurred into silence. She thought it was the end, but fate had other plans. A caravan of women, wrapped in deep blue cloth, found her. At their center stood Queen Halima, tall and fierce, with eyes that had seen too much to be fooled by appearances. She knelt beside the barely conscious Tamina, studied her broken hands, the dried tears on her cheeks, and the fire still flickering behind her eyes. "You have been broken," Halima said softly. "Good. Now we rebuild." Ijara was nothing like Kinuli. It was a hidden kingdom built by women who had been cast out, betrayed, or forgotten. They had turned their pain into power, and they saw something in Tamina, something rare. Halima didn't treat her as a victim. She treated her as a student. The training began with no mercy. Tamina learned to wield a sword, not for revenge, but for justice. She studied the laws of ancient lands, learned diplomacy, led mock battles, and mastered how to win a war without drawing blood. Day after day, year after year, she pushed her body and mind past every limit. The pain of losing her child never faded, but instead of drowning in sorrow, Tamina used it as fuel. She rose before the sun. She fought harder than anyone. She listened more than she spoke, and she never forgot who she was. After 5 years, she no longer moved like a broken girl. She stood like a leader. Her voice commanded silence. Her presence inspired courage. The women of Ijara gave her a title, General Tamina, not just a fighter, but a protector, a builder, a symbol of rebirth. But even with all her victories, her strength, and her respect, Tamina kept one piece of herself hidden. Every night, after the campfires died down and the stars filled the sky, she stood alone at the highest cliff. Her eyes searched the wind as if it could carry back what she lost. She whispered one name, softly, but with all the love in her heart. Okilo. It was the name she gave her son, a name no one in Ijara ever heard, a name that lived in her soul like a heartbeat. She had no proof he was alive, no clue where he was. But mothers don't forget. And Tamina wasn't just a mother anymore. She was becoming something more. It was a quiet night in Ijara. The fire had burned low, and the stars blinked softly above. Tamina stood on the edge of the cliff, as she always did, whispering her son's name to the wind. But this night was different. A commotion stirred in the village square. A figure, thin and trembling, collapsed at the gates of Ijara. She was a servant, her clothes torn, her breath uneven, her eyes filled with desperation. She had escaped from Akondu, risking her life to deliver one message. Tamina rushed to her, heart pounding. The woman looked up, lips cracked and voice shaking. "Your son, he's alive," she said. Tamina froze. The servant continued, gasping between words. "They never buried him. Chief Barago lied. Your boy, he lives in the palace, but they keep him locked away. No one sees him. They call him cursed." Tamina dropped to her knees, her strength drained in an instant. Tears rolled down her cheeks. For years she had survived with nothing but a faint hope. And now, confirmation. Her baby, Okilo, was not dead. He was hidden, stolen, and branded as something to be feared. "Why?" Tamina asked, her voice barely a whisper. "They say he cries under the moon," the servant said. "They say strange things happen when he laughs. They fear him, call him a spirit child. But he's just a boy, alone." Tamina clutched her chest, the pain overwhelming. All these years, he had been right there, growing up without love, locked away like a secret. Her worst nightmare was true, but so was her greatest hope. Her boy was alive, and now she would stop at nothing to bring him back. Inside the grand palace of Akondu, where gold draped the walls and silk flowed like rivers, a small boy swept the stables. His clothes were torn, his feet bare, his hands cracked from scrubbing. His name was Okilo. They told him he was a servant, born from the gutters, unworthy to sit or speak unless spoken to. Every day he shoveled horse dung, carried water, and slept beside the animals. No one looked him in the eye, not even Zubaru, his own father, who believed the child had died. But Okilo wasn't ordinary. Each night, when the moon rose high, he would sit in silence and stare at the stars. In his dreams, a woman would appear, tall, graceful, her eyes soft like the night sky. She would sing lullabies only he could hear. Her voice wrapped around his heart like a memory he never lived but always knew. He once gathered courage to ask Chief Barago, "Who am I?" Barago's face twisted. He grabbed the boy by the collar and spat. "You are nothing! You were born from darkness. You should have never lived." The words stung, but Okilo didn't cry. He never did. Something inside him whispered otherwise. Something deep, like a drum that refused to be silenced. When no one watched, Okilo stood tall in front of mirrors, mimicking the way nobles walked. When alone, he repeated the lullaby from his dreams, the tune his heart knew before his ears did. Sometimes, the palace lamps would flicker when he sang. Once, a wild horse bowed its head when he passed. The palace guards laughed behind his back, calling him the cursed boy. They mocked his silence, teased his eyes, which glowed like stars in certain light. But Okilo held on, to the dream of that woman, to the feeling that he was not meant to be here forever, that somewhere beyond these palace walls, someone was waiting, someone who knew his name. At the break of dawn, when the sky was still painted with soft shades of mist, the ground outside Ikondu trembled, not from thunder, but from footsteps, thousands of them. Spears rose like a steel forest, shields gleamed in rows, and the people of Ikondu rushed to their gates in fear and awe. What they saw stunned them. Tamina. But she was no longer the gentle girl they had cast away years ago. She stood at the front of the army like a flame carved from steel, tall, armored, powerful. Her voice carried like a bell through the cold morning. "I come not for revenge," she declared. "I come for the truth." Behind her stood 10,000 warriors of Ijara, men and women who had trained with her, bled beside her, and now followed her as their general. They didn't shout, they didn't threaten, they simply stood in silence, waiting for her signal. The guards at Ikondu's gates didn't know whether to fight or fall to their knees. Inside the palace, Barago felt his chest tighten. He had buried Tamina's name, erased her from history, and now she stood alive and stronger than ever. The people of Ikondu whispered. Many still remembered Tamina, the kind one, the bride who smiled at children and greeted elders with 2 hands. They remembered her cries the day her baby died, and how quickly she was cast out. Now, they looked at her in awe. Zubaru rushed to the gates, eyes wide, lips trembling. His wife, his lost Tamina, was no longer lost. She had become a storm. Their eyes met, and for a moment, time froze. "Tamina," he whispered, but she didn't speak to him. Not yet. She stepped forward slowly, each boot against the earth louder than a drum beat. The army held its ground. The mist curled around her like a crown. "I ask for no blood," she said. "I ask for my son." A gasp ran through the crowd. Barago tried to hide behind his throne, but truth had already begun to rise like the sun, and no walls, no gold, no lies could stop what was coming. Barago's face twisted with panic as the people stared at him, eyes wide with questions and suspicion. He pointed a trembling finger at Tamina and shouted, "She is mad! A witch queen from the mountains! Don't listen to her lies!" His voice echoed through the silent square, but it only made him look smaller. Just then, a young boy stepped forward from the crowd. Dressed in rags, but with dignity in his steps, he moved past the guards and the elders until he stood right in front of Tamina. His eyes met hers. He didn't say anything at first. He just stared, as if something inside him had awakened. "You," he whispered, "you are the woman from my dreams. You used to sing to me under the stars." The crowd gasped. Tamina knelt before him, tears in her eyes, and slowly opened her palm. Inside was a faded cloth, carefully preserved. On it, stitched with red thread, was a small mark, a spiral, the same spiral that sat like a birthmark on the boy's neck. "You are my son," Tamina said softly. "Your name is Okilo. They stole you from my arms the night you were born. You were never cursed. You were chosen." The air shifted. The elders of Ikondu, seated in their ancient robes, turned sharply toward Chief Barago. Their eyes burned with truth. "Did you steal this child from his mother?" one of them asked. Barago's face turned pale. He looked around, searching for escape, but there was none. The people were watching. The truth was heavy in the air. His voice cracked when he spoke. He was a threat. The prophecy. It said a woman would bear a son who would overthrow me. I couldn't let that happen. The elders stood. One said, "You feared the child, so you destroyed the mother's life." Another added, "You called him cursed, but you were the curse on this land." Whispers grew into angry murmurs. Barago stepped back, his legs shaking, but there was no hiding, no more lies. Okilo turned to face the elders. His voice was quiet, but strong. "I do not want the throne. I only want my mother to be free." Tamina placed a hand on his shoulder. "And I want justice, for every lie, for every tear." The oldest elder raised his staff. "Then justice you shall have." Barago's reign was over, and the truth, after years buried in silence, had finally spoken. Barago's hands shook as the elders pronounced their judgment. The once feared ruler, dressed in gold and pride, now stood with dirt on his face and shame in his eyes. His crown was yanked from his head and tossed to the ground like garbage. The guards who once bowed to him now grabbed his arms and dragged him down the palace steps. Through the streets he had once ruled with fear. The people of Ekondu didn't cheer. They watched in silence. Mothers held their children close. Old men shook their heads. No one raised a hand to stop it. No one wept for Barago. He had ruled too long with cruelty, hiding behind power and secrets. Now, the truth had pulled him out of the shadows. "Let him live among the rats," one elder said, just as he made his own blood suffer. The guards threw Barago into a dark, filthy cell below the city, the same place he once sent innocent people to rot. The walls smelled of mold and old tears. Rats ran across the floor, squeaking in the corners. The man who once walked on marble floors now sat on cold stone, alone, with only regret and the echo of his crimes. He called out, "I did it for the kingdom. I did it to protect Ekondu." But no one answered. Outside, the sun was rising. Tamina and Okilo stood at the palace gates. For the first time, mother and son were together in the light. The people bowed to her, not out of fear, but out of respect. She had returned not with vengeance, but with truth, and the truth had set the whole village free. Barago's name would no longer be spoken with honor. His statues were taken down, his portraits burned. The stories of his lies would be told for generations, not to praise him, but to warn others of what fear and greed can do. And deep inside the cold, damp prison, Barago sat with his head in his hands. The world he built on lies had collapsed. The throne he clung to was now a symbol of shame, and the boy he called Nothing had become the light of Ekondu. That was how the tyrant fell, not with war, not with blood, but with truth. The day of the coronation came, and the skies above Ekondu seemed to glow with a new light. Bells rang from every corner, drums beat with joy, and people from both Ijara and Ekondu gathered to witness something no one thought possible. Tamina, once cast out as cursed and broken, now stood tall in royal robes, a golden crown in her hands, ready to take the throne, not just of one kingdom, but two. Ijara, the hidden land of strong women and forgotten souls, and Ekondu, the mighty city that once rejected her, now united under one ruler. Tamina didn't smile out of pride. Her eyes held strength, but also peace. She looked at the people, not above them, but with them. Her voice rang clear when she spoke. She did not come to rule through fear or anger. She came to bring justice, healing, and a new beginning. She came not to destroy the past, but to shape the future. She forgave those who had once turned their backs on her, but she did not forget the lessons she learned. Beside her stood a boy, no longer hidden, no longer in rags. Prince Okilo, dressed in royal garments, his head high, stood like a light reborn. The same boy who once cleaned stables now held a sword at his waist and truth in his heart. His eyes searched the crowd, and when they met his mother's, a quiet smile passed between them. Two souls who had survived everything, now walking into the future together. The people bowed, first slowly, then all at once. They were not bowing to a queen of bloodline alone, but to a woman who had earned every step of her journey, a woman who turned pain into power and sorrow into strength. As the crown was placed on Tamina's head, A wind rushed through the courtyard, as if the land itself was blessing her. Flowers were thrown in the air, songs erupted, and laughter spread through the streets of Ekondu for the first time in years. In that moment, two worlds became one. The proud warriors of Ijara joined hands with the citizens of Ekondu. Walls that had divided them for years began to fall, not with force, but with hope. And at the center of it all stood Queen Tamina, the woman they once called cursed, now crowned by fate itself. From that day on, her name was written in every history scroll, not just as a queen, but as a legend, a woman who walked through fire, carried scars, and rose, not with anger, but with light. And by her side, Prince Akilo's eyes burned with purpose. He was no longer the lost boy in dreams, he was the future. Together, they rebuilt a kingdom not on lies, but on truth, unity, and love. Under Queen Tamina's rule, the world began to change. Ekondu and Ijara, once strangers with walls between them, became one strong and united kingdom. Tamina didn't rule with fear or pride. She ruled with wisdom, with compassion, and with the strength that only someone who has lost everything could carry. She remembered what it felt like to be powerless, and that memory shaped every law she passed. She built schools in every village, not just for boys, but especially for girls. She trained them in strategy, leadership, and the power of knowledge. No longer would daughters be silenced or treated as weak. Under her rule, girls learned how to hold swords, speak in council, and dream without limits. She said, "Let every child know their voice matters," and she meant it. She changed how the council worked too. No more were decisions made in secret or by blood alone. Farmers, traders, mothers, and even stable boys had a vote. The land became a place where everyone had a say. Justice wasn't for the rich, it was for everyone. If a merchant was wronged, or a poor man accused unfairly, the law would protect them. People began to walk with pride, not fear. As for Barago, the once powerful tyrant who had lied, stolen, and ruled through shadows, he watched from a dark, cold cell. Day after day, he heard the laughter of children outside his window. He heard music. He heard the people cheering Queen Tamina's name. He saw the banners of peace fly high above the palace that was once his. And he realized, too late, that all his power couldn't stop a woman with a reason to rise. Tamina had been exiled as a cursed bride, her baby stolen from her arms. She walked barefoot through pain, trained in silence, and returned with an army not to destroy, but to rebuild. She came back with not just a son, but with a kingdom that believed in her. She stood on the ruins of her past and built something greater than anyone had imagined. And Prince Akilo, now growing into a wise leader beside her, never forgot the boy he once was. He helped his mother guide the kingdom with kindness, strength, and vision. Together, they built a future for generations to come. Tamina's name became more than a title. It became a lesson. She wasn't just a queen. She was proof that no matter how far you fall, you can rise. She was proof that what others call weakness can become your greatest strength. This isn't just a tale from the past. It's a truth that echoes through time. Never underestimate the strength of a woman with purpose, because even when the world throws her into the dark, she doesn't break. She becomes the light. What if I told you that the greatest strength comes from the deepest pain? Queen Tamina's journey from exile to the throne is a story of resilience, courage, and the unbreakable spirit of a woman who refused to be silenced. She lost everything, her son, her home, her dignity, but she didn't stay down. She rose, and not only did she reclaim her life, but she changed an entire kingdom for the better. Her story is a reminder to all of us. No matter how broken you may feel, no matter how many times life knocks you down, you have the power to rise. You are stronger than you think, and your purpose is greater than any obstacle. Queen Tamina turned her pain into purpose, and now her legacy is one of strength, justice, and hope for generations to come. If Tamina's story inspired you, if it moved your heart, take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear this message, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel. By subscribing, you join a community of dreamers, believers, and change makers. Together, we can spread these powerful stories and keep lifting each other up. Thank you so much for watching, for your support, and for believing in the power of a single story to change the world. Keep pushing forward. Your greatest chapter is yet to come.